Imagine a darkness descending, not of night, but of an unseen enemy. In the mid-14th century, Europe faced a pestilence that would redefine civilization, forever altering its course. Before modern medicine, plagues were terrifying. When the bubonic plague arrived, Europe was a brutal, crowded place where disease spread with horrifying speed through unsanitary conditions. Originating in Central Asia, the Black Death likely arrived in Europe via trade routes carried by fleas on rats aboard merchant ships that docked in bustling port cities. The culprit: Yersinia pestis bacteria, transmitted by fleas. When these fleas bit infected rodents, they carried the deadly pathogen, then passed it to humans during their feeding. The signs were horrific: fever, chills, vomiting, and the dreaded buboes, swollen, painful lymph nodes, often black, that gave the plague its name. Death came quickly. Within months, the plague raged from Italy across Europe. It moved like wildfire through densely populated areas, overwhelming unprepared societies, and leaving a trail of death in its wake. Doctors and priests offered little help. Lacking germ theory, they blamed miasma, bad air, divine wrath, or even poisoning. Their treatments were often ineffective or even harmful. The prevailing theory of bad air led people to burn aromatic herbs and block windows. While these actions had little effect on the bacteria, they offered a perceived sense of control. Many believed the plague was God's punishment for humanity's sins. This led to fervent religious practices, processions, and confessions aimed at appeasing an angry deity above. In their desperation, some groups were blamed. Jewish communities, in particular, faced horrific persecution and violence, falsely accused of poisoning wells and spreading the disease deliberately. Fear and despair fueled folk beliefs. The figure of the Grim Reaper, a skeletal personification of death, became a potent symbol, appearing in art and folklore to represent the plague's reach. Desperate measures included bloodletting and lancing buboes, often performed by barber surgeons without sterile tools. These practices frequently introduced more infection, worsening the patient's condition. Physicians sometimes wore plague doctor masks with bird-like beaks, stuffed with herbs. They believed this filtered the miasma, an attempt to bravely, if misguidedly, confront the disease. The sheer number of dead overwhelmed cemeteries. Mass graves became common, horrifying sights where bodies were piled high, further spreading disease and terror among the living. Many who could fled cities for the countryside. However, by the time symptoms appeared, they often carried the plague with them, inadvertently spreading it to new communities. Cities like Venice pioneered quarantine. Ships arriving were forced to wait for 30, then 40 days, hoping this would stop the disease before goods and crews entered. The Black Death killed an estimated 75 to 200 million people in Eurasia and North Africa. Europe's population dropped by 30 to 60%, an unprecedented demographic catastrophe in recorded history. With so many dead, labor became scarce and valuable. Peasants and serfs found themselves in a stronger bargaining position, demanding better wages and conditions from landowners. The massive death toll severely weakened the feudal system. The newfound power of the peasantry contributed to its eventual decline, paving the way for new social structures and economies. Wages for surviving workers, particularly agricultural laborers, surged. This economic shift created a substantial increase in disposable income for the common people, changing local economies. With fewer heirs, land ownership patterns changed. Estates were consolidated, sold, or sometimes abandoned, leading to changes in farming practices and the landscape itself. The newfound economic power and resentment over attempts to suppress it fueled widespread peasant uprisings, such as the Jacquerie in France and the Peasants' Revolt in England. The plague's devastation led many to question faith. Why would God allow such suffering? This doubt weakened the Church's absolute authority and stimulated diverse spiritual and intellectual inquiry. Paradoxically, the loss of scholars led to the founding of new universities or the expansion of existing ones. There was a renewed focus on medical and scientific learning. The sheer scale of the mortality forced a reevaluation. While slow, it spurred advancements in understanding anatomy, sanitation, and public health measures that would benefit future generations. Art became more somber and focused on mortality. The dance macabre or dance of death motif, showing skeletons leading people to their graves, became popular. With life so unpredictable, a greater appreciation for the present emerged. This shift in mindset may have contributed to the burgeoning Renaissance spirit of humanism and earthly pursuits. The Black Death wasn't a one-off event. It returned in subsequent waves for centuries, though usually less virulent, keeping mortality rates elevated and shaping European society's development. The figure of the plague doctor, though ineffective in treatment, became a chilling, iconic symbol of the era's fight against an incomprehensible foe, a testament to human attempts to confront fear. The survivors bore immense grief, but also remarkable resilience. They rebuilt, adapted, and carried on, demonstrating the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of unparalleled loss. It took centuries, but populations eventually recovered. However, the memory and impact of the Black Death profoundly reshaped the social, economic, and cultural fabric of Europe forever. The crisis exposed the weaknesses of existing governance. Rulers and authorities were forced to reconsider their methods for public health, economic management, and social order. While germ theory was unknown, the devastating consequences led to increased focus on sanitation. Cities began implementing rudimentary public health initiatives, like waste removal and cleaner water supplies. The plague significantly impacted craft guilds. While many masters died, the surviving artisans gained more influence, sometimes leading to higher quality goods and specialized training. Trade routes were severely disrupted, leading to economic instability for years. The interconnectedness of medieval Europe meant that losses in one region affected others significantly. The collective trauma left deep psychological scars. A pervasive sense of fatalism and a fear of contagion lingered for generations, influencing social interactions and attitudes towards life itself. The understanding of how rats and fleas spread disease was rudimentary. Efforts focused on killing rats, but without understanding the full cycle, containment remained extremely difficult. The sheer horror of the plague inspired a morbid fascination. It became a subject of literature, art, and discourse, reflecting a society grappling with mortality on an unprecedented scale. Stories and legends about the plague persisted for centuries, serving as cautionary tales and historical markers. The Black Death embedded itself deeply into the collective memory of Europe. Existing medical knowledge proved insufficient. This put immense pressure on emerging medical schools to develop more effective diagnostic techniques and treatment strategies for future outbreaks. Extreme religious movements, like the Flagellants, arose. These groups whipped themselves publicly, believing their suffering and penance could appease God and stop the plague's spread. The need for sanitation and new burial practices influenced architecture. Hospitals began to be designed with more consideration for airflow and hygiene, though rudimentary by modern standards. Abandoned villages and fields dotted the landscape for decades. Nature began to reclaim areas once densely populated, creating a poignant symbol of the plague's devastating reach. While devastating, the depopulation created new economic niches. Survivors could pursue specialized trades or take on roles previously unavailable due to guilds or competition. The death of scholars, scribes, and artisans meant a significant loss of specialized knowledge. The transmission of skills and historical records was tragically interrupted in many areas. The pandemic brought a new, terrifying smell to towns and cities, the odor of death. This constant reminder of mortality contributed to the overall sense of despair and fear. The church's authority was challenged, noble families lost members and influence, and the peasantry gained economic leverage. This altered the long-term power dynamics across European society. Even after the major outbreaks subsided, a deep-seated fear of contagion remained. This influenced personal interactions, travel, and public gathering for centuries to come. The Black Death, while horrific, acted as a powerful catalyst. It accelerated societal changes that were already underway and forced a reevaluation of medieval life and its systems. Early public health measures, like quarantine and health boards, born from the plague experience, were costly. They represented a significant government expenditure previously unimaginable. With populations decimated and traditional structures weakened, there was a subtle shift towards valuing individual lives and contributions more than before. This fostered nascent humanism. The Black Death didn't just kill millions, it fundamentally reshaped the trajectory of European civilization, ushering in new economic, social, and cultural paradigms. The medieval world never truly understood the plague's biological cause, but the sheer devastation spurred innovations and societal shifts that laid groundwork for future progress. The plague created a significant population bottleneck. For centuries, European populations took to recover, fundamentally altering demographics and the pace of societal development. The economic and social upheaval may have indirectly contributed to the age of exploration. With new wealth and a thirst for resources, Europeans ventured beyond their known world. The human capacity to adapt and survive is remarkable. Despite the unfathomable loss, societies rebuilt themselves, integrating lessons learned from this devastating pandemic. Even after its initial ferocity, the plague remained a constant simmering threat. Public health measures and fear of recurrence became integral parts of European life for centuries. The plague significantly impacted the Church's prestige and resources. While still powerful, its unquestioned dominance began to wane as people sought answers beyond its doctrines. The Black Death left its mark on language. Words associated with death, sickness, and fear were added to vocabularies or took on new, darker meanings. It is impossible to overstate the Black Death's impact. It was a catastrophic event that didn't just kill millions, but fundamentally reshaped the world's trajectory. The untold stories of the Black Death remind us of humanity's vulnerability, resilience, and the transformative power of crisis. What lessons from this era still resonate today?